Now our form does add a new message, but it's the same message every time. So let's make it actually use what we type in the form. For that, we need to learn a little bit about how forms work in React. I pointed you in the direction of the documentation. Is this? No, that's a blog post. Oopsie, wrong keyboard shortcut. Oops. So in the official React docs, under main concepts, there's a link for forms. Let's read about that. HTML form elements work a little bit differently from other DOM elements in React because form elements naturally keep some internal state. Like in just plain HTML, there's some internal state in a form with all of the data that's inside the form fields, right? You can get their dot values. So that's all fine, but we want React to be in charge of the state. We want React to be in charge of all our data. And we have a couple of ways that we can use React to get the data out of a form element. The two common ones are using refs and using controlled forms. Controlled forms is preferred because that puts React totally in charge of the internal state of our data, including whatever's being typed into the form. So controlled components, typically input, etc., maintain their own state and update it based on user input. In React, state that changes, mutable state, is typically kept in the state property of the component and only updated with set state. So we can combine the two by making React state be the single source of truth for the value of that data. Then the React component that renders the form also controls what happens in the form on subsequent user input. So what we do is we store this in the state of this component. So let's go ahead and add a constructor here. Anytime we have a constructor on a component, we need to call super. Let's see what's going on here. Well, in this one case, I showed you earlier, you can actually set state outside now because of the same thing that lets us do these arrow functions this way. So if that's the only thing you need to do in the constructor, you don't need to do anything else, you could just set state outside like this. So you don't write this dot state anymore, even though this dot state is what you're setting. You just write state equals. Not inside any method, just inside the class. So we'll do it this way this time, just to see both ways. So we need body. Right, that's the thing that's being modified by the form, right? So we'll just initialize that as an empty string. And then on our input, we just need to say value equals this dot state dot body. Maybe I'll put autofocus and required at the beginning instead of the end. So value equals this dot state dot body. So now React is in charge of the value of that field. And right now, if we check it on the page, typing won't do anything. Because now the default behavior in the DOM of changing the value there every time we type is not happening. It's now going to be whatever is in state, and we can only change state with set state. So we need to basically call set state every time we do anything inside that field. And you'll see all this in the example and the React docs. You'll see what they've done is here's our input. We have value equals this dot state dot value, and on change, we call this dot handle change. And this dot handle change just calls set state and sets that value equal to the value of the event target. So we can do the same thing. We'll add a new method called handle change. It'll get past an event, which is really the DOM event wrapped inside a React thing, but it'll still have prevent default and target and all that stuff. And all we want it to do is call this.setState. And what property on state are we changing? Body, right? So we'll change body to event.target.value. And then we just need to make sure that handle change gets called every time the input changes. So we'll add onChange, camel cased again, and set onChange equal to this.handleChange. That's the kind of thing we'll do several times. It'll become a little more comfortable after you've done it a few times. Not that big a deal, but the result is, yeah, we can type in here again. And better yet, when we look at message form, state body is now whatever I typed in there. So we've totally reactified this, and it happens every time we type. This session is super into anime based on chat. So what do we do with that? Now we could potentially do something with this when we submit, right? So state is getting updated, which is pretty cool. But we want that to actually get added as a new chat message. You using your laptop keyboard as a turntable there? Okay, the handle change isn't working yet. So what can we do in handle submit now? What can we do? Yeah, can we? So it's calling add message, but now we've got some data we'd like to go in with that, right? So what does that have, Lean? So we don't need. You're on the right track. We add message is how we actually change the thing, right? So what if we pass it as an actual argument to add message? And what should that argument be? This.state.body, right? So this doesn't need to know anything about the form, right? It's not the form value. Because now, once we've written handle change, we never need to worry about the form value again. Because the form value is automatically changing state. So all we need to pass up to add message is this.state.body, because that will always be whatever is typed in there. So when we submit, we just pass up this.state.body as an argument to add message. Now, of course, add message isn't written to accept that yet, so we need to change add message too. So that's up in chat.js, right? So up in chat.js, we have add message. So now that receives an argument, which is the message body, right? So then body, instead of being a string, it'll be whatever we passed in as the argument. Make sense? Let's see if it works. This session is super into anime. Yep, it works. A couple little pieces of shorthand from, well, one quick piece of shorthand that ES6 gave us. If in an object literal, you have a key whose value is stored in a variable with the same name as that key, so anytime you see something like this, body : body, that can now be written as just body. So that's just shorthand for create a property called body whose value is a variable called body. You can just write it as body now. So we could do that down here too. Set state, instead of messages : messages, just messages. Instead of username colon username, just username. It's a super common thing to do. We just did it 3 times in the same method. So now we can use that shorthand. That's just an ES6 feature. So just know that this is short for username colon username, right? But you don't have to write all that anymore. Let's prove it. Let's make sure it still works. Yep. Totally works. All right. So what do we do here? Add messages via a controlled form.